Well, for the last 6 weeks, we've been studying David from the Old Testament. Today is our last video on that particular topic, and we're talking about David's heart of confession. We're in the studio with Pastor Ross. Ross, who exactly would benefit from today's topic?
I think anybody who's feeling like they have maybe failed spiritually, morally, relationally, and how do I make a comeback from just really blowing it in life?
Yeah, because that was David's story. Now, he blew it plenty of times in his life, but in Psalm 51, he's writing this confessional psalm. It's one of my favorite psalms. And he's writing it out of the context of a situation that had happened earlier. Why don't you explain that?
Right, it was a real mess. David, to try to make it a long story short, David had seen this woman, he was attracted to her. Her husband was off at war with the army, so David had his kind of Me Too moment, and he brought her, he used the power of his throne to bring her over and slept with her, and then she became pregnant. So he has a problem. The cover-up, they say, is often worse than the crime, right? So he has to cover this up. The way he ended up having to do that is he put her husband in a place in the battle where he was sure to be killed. So he compounded his lust and adultery with murder, and then he just kind of seemed like he forgot about it. The baby was born. He brought her into his palace as one of his wives. This child is born, and he's living for at least 9 months with just total oblivious to the consequences of his actions. When finally this prophet comes to him, the prophet tells a clever story to help David understand, to realize, I screwed up. Yeah. And the prophet pounded him with it, and David, to his credit, admitted. He says, you know what? I have messed up. What I've done is wrong in God's sight. And the psalm is written as he's processing the meaning of that, the implications of his sin before God.
And so it really serves as really a great example of how, because I think everyone can relate to this. In fact, this is one of those times where I think probably everyone watching this video, whatever you're struggling with is not nearly as bad as what Ross just explained David went through. He really screwed up. And we find 3 things in Psalm 51 that kind of bring him back from failure, right?
Right.
So walk us through these 3 things. The first thing you say is this. It's real simple. Confess your mess.
Right. If David could come back, we could come back. But it starts by saying, I did it, by being honest with it. And in Psalm 51, David is saying, look, God, I've sinned against you. I recognize it. I recognize that I've offended you. And he says, I need you to forgive me. And so he's just really honest and open about no excuses. He doesn't say mistakes were made. He's not trying to defer it. He's just really owning it deeply, what he's done.
Yeah, he says in verse 2, wash me clean from my guilt, purify me from my sin, for I recognize my rebellion. It haunts me day and night.
So you can see from that how he takes this really seriously. He's haunted by it. He's not trying to get out of it, taking responsibility. He's not trying to shift the blame to somebody else. He's open, honest, and vulnerable before God.